Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It was nearly midnight when I pulled up in front of Dana's house, the porch light casting a warm yellow glow on a lie I could feel in my bones. Clara had just told me, again, that she was spending the night here. Girls' night, she called it. Third time this month. But something about her tone felt too smooth, too rehearsed. I sat in the car a minute longer, staring at the windows. Then I stepped out and walked up the path. Quiet. Tense. When I rang the doorbell, it was Tim, Dana's husband, who opened the door, looking surprised. Ethan? Hey man. Everything all right? Is Clara here? I asked, keeping my voice flat. His eyes darted for just a second, one flick of hesitation. That was all I needed. She's yeah. Yeah, come in. I stepped inside, and there she was. Clara, my wife, curled up on the far end of the couch, barefoot, holding a glass of wine like she lived here. Ethan, she said, her voice laced with forced calm. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I just stared at her, that glass of wine, the relaxed way she looked at me, like I was the one interrupting something. Dana stood near the kitchen island, her smile frozen. Hey, Ethan, she said gently. Clara just got here a bit ago. Save it, I snapped. Clara set the wine down and stood up, her voice growing sharper. You're being ridiculous. I told you where I was. No, I said, stepping closer. You told me a version of where you were supposed to be, but you didn't think I'd show up, did you? I don't need to report to you every time I walk out the door, she snapped. I'm not some prisoner. Then why lie? Because you don't trust me. Because you keep giving me reasons not to. Dana's hand was on Tim's arm now, and he looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. I felt the fury rising, hot, unstoppable. I turned and slammed my fist straight into the window by the front door. The glass cracked under my knuckles, a sharp, stinging jolt, and for a second everyone froze. Then I grabbed Clara by the wrist. Let go of me, she shouted, stumbling as I pulled her toward the door. You're coming home. Now. Tim made a half step forward, uncertain. Hey man, come on. Let's not. I'm not touching her, I barked. I'm taking back my wife. Clara wrenched free halfway across the lawn, but I turned, eyes blazing. You're not staying here again. Ever. Dana called after us, voice trembling. This doesn't have to be. Yeah, I muttered. It already is. We drove home in silence. The kind that screams louder than anything else. My hand throbbed from the punch, but I didn't care. Let me tell you something about me. I work in HVAC. I fix other people's messes all day long. Cracked pipes, broken vents, busted heat in the winter. I show up, patch things up, keep people comfortable. I like that life. Predictable, reliable. But tonight, I realized, the mess at home wasn't something I could fix with tools and tape. And what happened back there? That wasn't the end. That was just the first spark. The door slammed behind us, echoing through the dark, quiet house like a final shot. I didn't even bother flicking on the light right away. The silence was louder than either of us. Clara walked in a few steps, then turned to me, her jaw clenched. Did you have to drag me out like that? What? Were you trying to make a scene? Oh, don't worry, I said, tossing my keys on the counter. You and Dana already had that covered. I told you where I was. No, I snapped, stepping into the kitchen behind her. You told me a lie that sounded enough like the truth for me not to question it. Again. She spun around. So now what? You're going to punish me for spending a night at a friend's house. I laughed under my breath and shook my head. Do you hear yourself? You want me to believe that's what this is about? Because this isn't just one night. It's been weeks, Clara. You vanish for hours, don't answer calls, and when I ask, you act like I'm some paranoid idiot. She crossed her arms and leaned back against the fridge, eyes sharp. Maybe I'm tired of being monitored. My voice dropped. You think this is about control? Isn't it? She fired back. You've been smothering me, Ethan. Every little thing I do feels like it needs your stamp of approval. I stared at her, stunned. Smothering you? Clara, I give you space. I work full-time. I come home. I cook. I fix the busted faucet. I do laundry when you forget. I've been keeping this house running, and the one thing I asked for, just some honesty. You turn that into control? I need freedom, she said flatly. I'm not meant to feel boxed in. My heart dropped. Freedom, I repeated. From me. She looked away then, toward the window above the sink. From this. From expectations. from constantly being someone's something. I blinked, trying to absorb that. You're my wife, Clara. She flinched at that. Yeah, I know. And for a long time, that's all I let myself be. My throat tightened. So what are you saying? That you're done being married? She didn't answer right away. Just walked past me to the cabinet, pulled out a glass, and filled it with water. Her silence felt colder than the tile under my feet. I'm saying, she finally whispered, I've been drowning and pretending it's rain. I leaned against the counter and exhaled slowly, my voice softer now. Then why didn't you tell me? Why fake all of it? Because, she snapped, turning to face me again, I didn't want to hurt you. I gave a bitter laugh. Too late for that. She looked tired suddenly, like her bones had been holding this weight for too long. I'm trying to figure out who I am, Ethan. And I can't do that with someone watching every move. I wasn't watching you, I said, my voice low. I was loving you. There's a difference. That hit her. I saw it in her face, just for a moment. The flicker of guilt, the way her jaw trembled before she hid it behind another sip of water. You could have just told me, I murmured. You could have sat me down and said you were lost, or bored, or hurt. I would have listened. I would have fought for you. She stared at the floor. I didn't want to fight. I nodded slowly, the weight settling deep in my chest. Yeah, you wanted a way out. She didn't deny it. And maybe that was the worst part. We stood there in silence, the fridge humming like it was the only thing keeping the air alive. Finally, I pushed off the counter and turned to leave the room. I'm sleeping in the guest room. She didn't stop me, just stood there, still clutching that glass like it could ground her. As I closed the door behind me, I realized something that made my stomach twist. I didn't even recognize her anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't recognize me either. The next morning, I was up before the sun, restless and cold. Clara was still asleep, at least I assumed so. I hadn't heard a sound from her side of the house. Maybe she was avoiding me, or maybe she was just that good at sleeping through wreckage. I needed air. I needed something warm, something simple. I left a note on the counter, grabbed my jacket, and headed out. There's this small bakery on the corner of Maple and Birch. Tiny place, family-owned, smells like cinnamon and quiet forgiveness. I picked out a few boxes of pastries. Didn't know what Dana or Tim liked, but it didn't matter. This wasn't about food. I was trying to be decent. Even after what happened, the drive to their house was only 10 minutes, but it felt longer. Every red light dragged. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to. I kept seeing Clara on that couch, barefoot, sipping wine like nothing mattered. And Dana, God, the way Dana smiled when I walked in. Too casual, too quick to cover. Something about it sat wrong. Still, I kept telling myself this was about me. About being the bigger person. I'd lost it last night, and I owed them an apology for that. Punching a window? Not exactly my proudest moment. I pulled into their driveway around 8:15. The house looked the same. Clean, quiet, picture perfect. The porch had one of those welcome signs with painted sunflowers. The kind of house you'd never suspect held secrets behind its walls. Tim opened the door this time, already dressed like he had somewhere to be. His smile was polite, a little too polished. Morning, Ethan. Everything all right? I lifted the bakery boxes a little. Peace offering. Thought I owed you both one for last night. He stepped aside, letting me in. Appreciate it. You didn't have to. Dana was in the kitchen, already sipping tea in one of those oversized mugs. Her blonde hair was up in a loose braid, and she gave me that same overcompensating smile. Ethan, she said too brightly. You didn't need to do this. Figured I should. I sat at their kitchen table while Tim grabbed plates and Dana sliced up a peach Danish. It was too early for small talk, but we did it anyway. Weather, sports, something about the HOA repainting the front gate. All of it fake and floaty, like everyone agreed to pretend last night never happened. So, I said, clearing my throat, sorry about the window. Dana waved it off. Please, it's glass. Tim already called someone. It'll be fixed by tomorrow. Tim chuckled. You should have seen your face, though. I mean, Clara looked just as shocked. That made me pause. Yeah, I said quietly. She looked surprised. They both sipped their tea. The silence came back too fast. I glanced around the room. Same kitchen I'd been in a dozen times. Same countertops. Same smell of vanilla and lemon dish soap. But now it felt staged. Everything about this felt like a play. Too cheerful. Too practiced. Tim was overly friendly. Dana laughed too often. And me? I was too quiet. When it was time to leave, I stood up and shook Tim's hand. He gave me that same solid grip, but something about his eyes didn't quite match the rest of his face. Dana walked me to the door and said, "Really, Ethan, don't feel bad about last night. Relationships get messy. We all snap sometimes." I nodded, but as I walked back to the car, pastry box empty and heart heavier than when I arrived, something clicked in my gut. Too calm. They were too calm. And I didn't know why that scared me so much. I didn't plan on coming back the next day, but something about the way Dana said, "relationships get messy," just kept playing in my head like an out-of-tune radio stuck on the wrong frequency. So I found myself pulling back into their driveway. No pastries this time. Just a calm face and 1,000 questions buried under my skin. Dana answered the door before I could even knock, like she'd been watching from the window. "Ethan," she smiled a little too wide. "Back so soon." I forced a grin. I figured I should properly apologize. Last time, I showed up swinging. She laughed, light and quick, like she was trying to get ahead of something. "You didn't have to, but come in." Tim was in the living room, lounging on the edge of the couch, pretending not to be surprised. "Hey, man," he said, standing up and reaching for a handshake. "You sure you're not here to check if we replaced that window yet?" I shook his hand. "I came in peace." Dana led me to the kitchen again. Same tea, same oversugared smiles. The house was still too clean. Candles lit. A vase of fresh tulips on the table. They were staging something. "I brought the drama yesterday," I said, sitting down. "So I figured I'd bring a little boring today. Talk weather, traffic, maybe taxes." Tim chuckled, taking a sip from his mug. "Man stuff." Dana tilted her head. "What's going on at the HVAC company? Still doing installs on weekends?" "Trying not to," I replied. "But folks around here forget summer gets hot every year." She laughed again. "Too easily. Same with husbands, right?" Tim glanced at her, just for a second. A twitch of something, annoyance? Warning? I couldn't tell. "I mean," Dana said quickly, catching the look, "they forget important things. Like how to rest." "Guilty," I said. It all felt hollow. I played along. Sipped the tea, smiled at the right times, nodded at every bland story they told. I listened to Tim talk about replacing gutters like it was the climax of a thriller. Dana offered me another lemon cookie. I took it, not because I wanted it, but because silence felt worse. And when I finally stood up, ready to leave, I shook Tim's hand again. Same grip, same forced smile. "Thanks for the tea," I said. "You sure you're okay?" Dana asked, her voice a little softer now. I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes were kind, but careful, watching my every movement. Like she was waiting to see if I'd explode again. "I'm fine," I said. "Better than yesterday." "Well," she said, stepping back, "we're always here if you need anything." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'll keep that in mind." I walked back to my truck, got in, and sat there a minute. Hands on the steering wheel. Engine off. And that's when it hit me. The calm I felt wasn't peace. It wasn't relief. It was something colder. Like the air right before a storm. Clara was waiting in the kitchen when I got home. Arms crossed. Leaning on the counter like she'd been practicing her stance all afternoon. The dishwasher hummed quietly in the background, but everything else was still. Tense. "I'm glad you're back," she said without looking at me. "We need to talk." I set my keys down, calm as ever. "Go ahead." She turned slowly, her eyes locking on mine. "I've been thinking, and I need you to understand something. I'm a free woman, Ethan." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that right?" "Yes," she said, her voice rising just a bit. "I'm not some house pet you can keep on a leash. I can go where I want, stay with who I want, and I don't owe you explanations every time I step out the door." I stared at her. "No one said you were a house pet, Clara. But marriage, it comes with some mutual understanding. At least it's supposed to." "I'm tired of justifying myself," she snapped. "Every time I leave this house, I feel your eyes following me, like I'm doing something wrong. That's not freedom." I nodded, slowly, deliberately. "You want freedom?" She hesitated. "Yes, I want space. I want to feel like I have control over my own life again." I walked over to the counter, opened the drawer where we kept the laptop, pulled it out, and started typing. "What are you doing?" she asked, the edge in her voice returning. "Giving you exactly what you want." She folded her arms tighter. "What's that supposed to mean?" Without looking up, I replied, "You want independence? That comes with responsibility." A few more clicks, and I shut the laptop. "Your debit cards won't work after tonight," I said, calm as ice. Joint accounts frozen. Credit line too. I already called the bank. Her eyes widened. What? You want your own life? Start with your own money. You can't just— I can, I said sharply, and I did. She stepped toward me, anger burning now. Are you trying to punish me? I stared at her for a long moment. No, I'm letting you be free, just like you asked. I didn't mean like this, she said, her voice cracking. I walked past her and grabbed a suitcase from the hall closet, dropped it on the bed, opened drawers, started folding clothes. Calm, efficient. What are you doing? She whispered. Packing your things. You don't get to decide where I live. I'm not, I said. You already decided. The second you checked out of this marriage and walked into someone else's house. She just stood there, watching me fold shirts she hadn't worn in weeks. You're being cruel, she finally said. No, I said, not looking at her. Cruel was lying to my face while playing dress up with your independence. She didn't speak. Her silence was different now, shaken. I zipped the bag closed and stepped back. Take some time. Stay with Dana, or whoever it is you're really with. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She grabbed her phone off the counter and stormed toward the front door. I'll be back, she said coldly. I didn't answer. I just watched the door shut behind her. And for the first time in weeks, the house felt honest. Empty, but honest. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock, soft, uncertain. I didn't move at first. Just sat on the couch, the remote in my hand, volume low. The knock came again. 3 days had passed since Clara stormed out. 3 days of quiet dinners, early mornings, and sleep that barely stuck. When I finally opened the door, there she was. Clara. Same coat, different face. Tired. Fragile. Her eyes already red before she even said a word. Hi, she said softly. I didn't reply, just stepped aside. She came in slowly, like the house was colder now, like it didn't recognize her anymore. I didn't know if you'd even open the door, she said, standing in the middle of the living room, holding her bag like a schoolgirl sent home early. I nodded toward the couch. Sit if you want. She hesitated before lowering herself onto the edge, like she was afraid the cushions would reject her too. I've been staying at Dana's, she started. But it wasn't comfortable. I sat across from her, still silent. She swallowed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat much. I kept thinking about you, about what I did. Still, I said nothing. I was wrong, she said suddenly, like the words had been building in her throat for days. I don't even know when I started pulling away. I felt lost. And instead of talking to you, I made it worse. I looked at her, but my face didn't move. Clara's voice cracked. You were always there, Ethan. Steady. And I wanted more. I wanted something that felt new, something that didn't feel like habit. I let that one sit for a second. And what did you find out there? She flinched, eyes dropping to the rug. Nothing. Just noise. Distractions. Dana let me stay, but she's not the friend I thought she was. And the people I've been around, they don't care about me. Not really. Funny, I said, because I did. I know, she whispered. I know that now. The silence between us thickened. She wrung her hands. Ethan, I want to come back. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you. I studied her, her eyes, her mouth, the way her shoulders trembled. It all looked real. But that's the thing about pain. It makes you cautious. Makes you read faces like maps and still not trust where they lead. I'm not asking you to forget, she added quickly. Just let me fix it. Please. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Why now? She blinked. What do you mean? You had 3 days. 3 nights. You could have stayed gone. Her voice dropped. Because nothing out there feels like home. And when I was lying on that air mattress in Dana's spare room, all I wanted was to come back to this couch. This air. You. I leaned back again, stared at the ceiling for a second, then nodded once. Just once. That was all I gave her. She let out a breath that sounded like it had been sitting in her lungs since the day she left. Thank you, she said, standing slowly. I'll grab my things. No rush, I said flatly. You know where everything is. She paused by the hallway, her eyes searching mine for some flicker of warmth. But I didn't give her that. And when she disappeared down the hall, I sat there in the same spot, staring at the rug like it held answers I couldn't find. She was back, but nothing felt lighter, only heavier. If you're still listening, please tap the like button on this video. I tried. I really tried. For a few days after Clara moved back in, we pretended. Dinners were quiet but civil. She folded laundry while I mowed the lawn. We didn't fight. We didn't laugh either. The air between us wasn't heavy anymore, just hollow. At night, she lay beside me like a ghost, breathing but not alive. And I'd stare at the ceiling, counting every creak in the walls, every turn of her body. Every second, I didn't ask the questions clawing at my throat. But the silence in my chest got too loud. Something was still wrong. Off. Broken in a way she wasn't talking about. And the worst part? I no longer believed it was just emotional distance. So one morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I met a guy named Wallace. Private investigator. Worked out of a cluttered office above a pawn shop downtown. Big hands, soft voice, eyes like a tired hound dog. He didn't ask a lot of questions when I told him what I needed. Follow my wife, I said. He nodded like it wasn't the first time he'd heard that. You suspect anything specific? I hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. He tapped his pen twice against a notepad. All right, give me a week. That week was the longest 7 days of my life. Clara started acting more affectionate, small touches on my arm, soft questions about work. She made spaghetti from scratch one night. Told me she missed doing that. I watched her every move, wondering if the guilt was finally showing, or if this was just another mask. On the 7th day, I got the text. Got something. Meet me at the office. I drove over in silence. Parked. Climbed the narrow stairs. Wallace was waiting inside, a manila folder on his desk. He didn't smile. I won't drag it out, he said, sliding the folder across. This was taken 2 nights ago. Midtown. Nightclub called Indigo Lounge. My fingers didn't shake when I opened it, but my heart did. First photo. Clara, in a tight black dress I hadn't seen in years, her arm hooked around someone's neck. Second photo. A close-up, her lips on his. Tim. I stared at it. At him. His face turned slightly to the side, but unmistakable. His hand on her lower back. Her eyes closed. My lungs forgot how to work. She was with Dana, Wallace said quietly. They arrived together, but once inside, Clara met up with him. Same guy from the house. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Sorry, man. I closed the folder, pressing it shut like maybe that would shut everything else down too. Thanks, I muttered. Send me the originals. Already did. I stood up. My legs moved, but it didn't feel like me inside them. You all right? Wallace asked. I didn't answer. Because no, I wasn't. I walked out of that office a different man than the one who walked in. And as I gripped the steering wheel in my truck, staring at the stoplight that wouldn't change, I felt it rising, boiling slow, heavy, dangerous. Rage. Not loud. Not messy. Just pure. Quiet. Complete. The kind that doesn't lash out. The kind that waits. And plans. I drove straight home, every red light daring me to run it. Every turn felt too slow. That folder sat on the passenger seat like a time bomb, and my grip on the wheel could have cracked stone. I had a plan. I had words stacked like bullets. I had rage. But when I walked through the door, Clara met me with a smile. Hey, she said, setting a tray of cut fruit on the counter. I was just about to call you. I stared at her. Smile still intact. Hair curled, makeup light, but perfect. Like she was thriving. What's going on? I asked, voice even. She kept moving, grabbing wine glasses from the cabinet. I'm throwing a little get-together tonight. Some friends are coming by. Dana, of course. The Coopers. Few folks from my Pilates class. I blinked slowly. Tonight. Yeah, she said, peeking over her shoulder. I figured we could use a little life in this house. Just drinks, light food. Nothing crazy. She didn't even flinch. Not once. Not even when I stepped closer and asked, and Tim? She froze for the briefest second, but it passed. I think Dana said he'd stop by for a bit. A beat of silence passed. I could hear the fridge humming. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a stage. And if she wanted an audience, I'd give her one. Sounds great, I said with a smile. Let's do it right. She looked surprised. Really? I nodded, cool and calm. I'll call a few friends too. We could use some fresh faces. Her brows rose, but she nodded. Sure. The more, the merrier. I walked out of the kitchen and straight to my office. Closed the door. Opened my contacts. Within the hour, I'd invited a dozen people. Coworkers, old friends, even our neighbors from across the street. The ones Clara never liked because they talked too much. That was the point. I kept my voice cheerful. Just a little gathering, I said to each of them. Drinks, Food. Conversation. Bring someone if you'd like. I kept the manila folder on my desk the whole time, just resting there, like a loaded weapon waiting to be drawn. By late afternoon, the living room was clean, candles were lit, and the music was queued up, low-volume jazz, Clara's favorite pre-party noise. She'd changed into a red dress, the kind of dress that drew compliments in crowds. "You seem upbeat," she said, eyeing me as I adjusted the wine glasses. "Just enjoying the moment," I replied. She studied me for a second longer than usual. Then the doorbell rang. The Coopers arrived first. Then Dana. Then her shadow, Tim. I watched him walk in like he belonged, like he wasn't the man in the photo I'd stared at for hours. His arm brushed against Clara's lower back in a way that made my jaw twitch. But I smiled through it. Every guest was greeted. Every glass was filled. Small talk danced across the room like fireflies. And I was right in the center. Calm. Charming. Dead quiet inside. Because tonight wasn't just a party. It was the setup. The fuse had been lit. And all I had to do now was wait for the silence to fall. The house was loud now. Glasses clinking. Someone laughing too hard near the couch. Music humming just enough to blur conversations together. Clara floated from group to group like this was her natural habitat, her hand always brushing someone's arm, her smile practiced and bright. I stood near the dining table, holding a drink I hadn't touched. Tim was across the room, talking to one of my neighbors like they were old friends. Dana hovered close to him, eyes darting, watching everything and nothing at the same time. Then it happened. Tim's hand slid around Clara's waist. Casual. Familiar. Like it had done that 100 times before. I felt the room narrow. I crossed the space between us before I realized I'd moved. "Get your hand off her," I said, my voice cutting clean through the noise. The music didn't stop, but conversations did. Tim looked at me, confused at first, then annoyed. "Relax, man. We're just talking." Clara spun toward me, eyes blazing. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "I'm ending this," I said. She laughed sharply. "You're embarrassing me." Tim scoffed. "Seriously, you need to chill." I stepped closer, my gaze locked on his. "You don't get to tell me what to do in my house." Clara shoved herself between us. "Stop it. Right now." "Apologize to Tim." I looked at her. Really looked. "Apologize?" "Yes," she snapped. "Or I swear, Ethan, I will divorce you." The word hung in the air. Divorce. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the door muttered, "Should we?" I nodded once. Calm. Steady. Then I looked back at Tim. "Sorry," I said. Clara let out a breath, relief flickering across her face. "I don't want you sleeping with my wife." The room went dead silent. Dana gasped. Someone dropped a glass. Tim's face drained of color. "What the hell are you talking about?" I reached into my jacket, pulled out the photos, and tossed them onto the table. They slid across the wood, stopped right in front of Clara. Her eyes dropped. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. One guest leaned forward, squinting. "Is that?" Tim backed up a step. "Those aren't. This isn't. Save it," I said. "Midtown. Indigo Lounge. Last week. Want me to keep going?" Clara's hands trembled as she stared at the images. "Ethan, I can explain." I laughed once. "Short. Empty. You already did. Every time you said you needed freedom." Dana crossed her arms and shrugged. "I mean, polygamy isn't that bad. People are so uptight about labels." Every head in the room snapped toward her. "What did you just say?" someone whispered. Another guest grabbed their coat. "This is insane." Tim opened his mouth again, but no one was listening now. The truth had sucked all the air out of the room. Clara reached for me. "Please. Not like this." I stepped back. "Like what?" "Honest." One by one, people started leaving. Quietly. Quickly. No goodbyes. No eye contact. The party was over. And so was the lie. The door clicked shut behind the last guest. For a few seconds, the house was still filled with the echo of it all. Shoes scuffing the floor, hushed voices, the sound of disbelief carried out into the night. Then silence. Clara stood in the center of the room, her face pale, the crumpled photos still clenched in her hand like they could be undone if she just held them tight enough. She looked at me like she didn't know who I was anymore. Like I was the one who changed. Then her lip trembled, and she broke. The sob hit her mid-breath, loud and raw, her knees buckling as she dropped to the floor beside the coffee table. The red dress bunched at her legs, makeup smudged, hair falling out of place. The perfect image cracked. I didn't know what I was doing, she cried, breath catching. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched her. I never planned to, she gasped, reaching for the back of the couch like it would steady her. Dana, she pushed it. She said I needed to stop living like some housewife. That I needed excitement. She made it sound harmless. My voice came low. Empty. Dana didn't kiss Tim. Clara looked up at me, her eyes red. No. Listen, it wasn't like that. Dana said he was just flirting. Said it would go away if I didn't encourage it. And you? She swallowed. I was lost. I thought maybe if I just let myself be someone else for one night. I cut in. That photo wasn't a mistake. That was comfort. That was routine. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I saw your face in that photo, I said. That wasn't guilt. That was familiar. She shook her head quickly, desperate. Please. I messed up, I know. But this doesn't have to be the end. We can fix it. I'll cut Dana off. I'll do whatever it takes. I finally stepped forward, and I said it flat. I'm disgusted. She froze. Not just with what you did, I continued, but with how long you stood in front of me pretending you hadn't. You moved back in, slept beside me, cooked dinner, told jokes, all while knowing what you'd done. She tried to stand, wobbling, tears streaking down her face. I didn't want to lose you. I thought I could bury it. You already lost me, I said. You just didn't feel it yet. Silence wrapped around us like a closing curtain. The music had stopped long ago. The candles burned low. The drinks on the counter stood untouched, like props left behind after the play had ended. Get your things, I said quietly. She blinked. What? Get out. She took a step toward me, her hand reaching. Ethan, please. I stepped back. I mean it. And for the first time, she saw it. The real end. She stared at me, lips parted, eyes wide. Then slowly, without another word, she turned and walked down the hall. The sound of the guest room door opening. A suitcase dragged from the closet. The soft click of zippers. When she passed me again, bag in hand, she didn't speak. Neither did I. The front door closed behind her with a whisper this time. And just like that, the house was still and honest. Finally, 3 weeks later, I walked into Ben and Maria's backyard like I'd done a dozen times before, but this time, the air felt different. Lighter. There was no Clara by my side. No Dana across the patio. Just the low thrum of music, kids playing in the grass, and the soft clink of glasses being filled with something cold and sparkling. Ethan, Ben waved me over. You made it, man. Wouldn't miss it, I said, handing him a bottle of wine. We talked for a bit. About work, about the weather, about absolutely nothing of consequence. And it was perfect. For the first time in a long time, my head wasn't spinning. My chest wasn't heavy. I wasn't trying to read between anyone's words. They didn't ask about Clara. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. And everyone had quietly drawn their lines. Dana and Tim were out. Clara too. The circle had closed without them. Not out of malice, just consequence. Sometimes people exit your life not with a bang, but with a quiet fade into memory. I was standing near the fire pit, plate in hand, when I felt a light touch on my elbow. Hey, stranger, came a soft voice. I turned. Olivia. She'd been part of our circle since forever. The kind of person who always asked how you were and actually meant it. I'm glad you came, she said, her smile warm. You seem lighter. I smiled. I feel lighter. She nodded. Good. You deserve that. We stood in companionable silence for a moment before she added, I always admired how you handled things. Even before all this. You've got this quiet strength about you. I didn't know what to say at first, so I just held her gaze for a second longer, and then quietly said, Thank you. She reached over, gently clinking her plastic cup against mine. To better things. I raised my glass. To honesty and peace. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I actually meant it. And that was the end of my story. I still wonder, if Dana hadn't said polygamy isn't that bad, would Clara have owned up to what she did, or kept pretending it was just freedom? Did Dana cross the line, or was she just enabling what Clara already wanted? Let me know in the comments if you think she did the right thing, or if you've ever seen someone play that same role. And hey, if this story hit you somewhere real, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.